Hello, church history friends. My name is Barb Walden, and I am so happy to be here to welcome you to today's program. Thank you all for joining us as we welcome Andrew Bolton as our third speaker in the Autumn 2025 lecture series. Now, also joining me today, as always, are Peter Smith and Wendy Eaton. Peter serves on the board of directors for the Community of Christ Historic Sites Foundation, while Wendy serves as the administrative assistant for the foundation. So thank you both for helping out behind the scenes today. We really appreciate it. Now, today is the third lecture of our autumn lecture series, as we are just rolling along this season with two more lectures to go. On the screen, you can see that this series is halfway through its November-December run. And if you've missed the previous two lectures, no worries. You can always catch the recordings on our website and YouTube channel. To register for the remaining two lectures, head over to the website. Wendy has already dropped the link into the chat. Now, due to the Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States, we will not have a lecture next Thursday. However, we will have two spectacular lectures the following week. The first is Mark Staker's lecture on Tuesday, December 2nd. Mark will present on Giving Tuesday, a special night where our board will be matching any donations given in supporting Community of Christ history. While 2 days later, we will welcome David Ettinger as our final guest speaker in the fall lecture series. David will explore Cecil Ettinger's journey to Nigeria in the 1960s, and a highlight of that night, of that lecture, will be viewing the original film footage from Cecil's trip to Nigeria in 1963 and 64. So that first week of December is going to be a double dose of church history, as it's also the final week of the series. So please join us. Now, friends, I know you hear my invitation to donate every week, and we sure appreciate your generous support. This week, we have an awesome opportunity for you. We are kicking off our annual fall campaign, and our board of directors has agreed to double the first $15,000 in donations that are received through the end of the year. So you all are the first to hear about this great double your donation, match your donation opportunity, which means I can confidently say that any donations given tonight will be matched by our board of directors. Your donations, small or large, or small and large, make a huge difference when it comes to supporting the ongoing development of new educational programs. Your gifts fund the Alma Blair internship program. They support the expansion of oral histories. They sponsor our annual church history bus tour, and they help ensure that we can continue to provide online programs like we're experiencing now, our seasonal lecture series and our book series, long into the future. You can see the QR code on the screen, and Wendy will drop the online donation link and mailing address into the chat. Thank you all for considering a gift to the fall campaign. We really can't do these things without you, and we so appreciate your generosity. Now, we're excited to have Andrew Bolton with us today to share his story. Andrew is a British adult convert to Community of Christ. After a teaching career in Britain, he led Peace and Justice Ministries for Community of Christ for 12 years and organized 11 peace colloquies. Now, one peace colloquy is a lot of work. I can't imagine managing 11, but Andrew managed to do it. Andrew served as an apostle for 9 years with 220 congregations in 10 Asian countries. He says he did not retire at 66, but rather graduated for further service. One of his current projects is helping start the church in Ireland. His latest book, called Living the Sermon on the Mount in Difficult Times. Today, Andrew will share his personal life journey with us in a story that he's called From War and Poverty to Questing for Peaceable Zion. Welcome, Andrew. The spotlight is all yours.
Thank you very much, Barb, for a lovely introduction. I want to introduce the girl in my life, Jewel. So you have to come up closer, Jill.
Hello.
So Jewel is listening, and she's been part of this story. Without her, it wouldn't have happened. So we're on the journey from war and poverty to questing about peaceable Zion. So I've got the opportunity to tell my story, and I'm going to begin the story with the story of Jack Bolton. This is my dad. He enlisted as a reserve in the British Army in 1938. He was a soldier for 7 years during World War II, and he was a mechanic, an engineer, and let me tell you a bit more about his story. He was at Dunkirk. This was the Allied army retreat from France when France fell in 1940. And Dad waded into the harbor water for 3 nights before he got a boat back to England. This retreat was a miracle in many ways. A third of a million soldiers were saved, and my dad was one of them. He got his boat was the Isle of Man steamer, which he'd been on many times as a child, going to the Isle of Man for holiday. And so he was beginning to feel safe because he was on this familiar boat with happy memories. And then as they were clearing the harbor, the boat in front of them was blown up and terror returned. He was involved with tanks, repairing tanks, and he told my brother the worst thing was removing human remains from damaged tanks. He ended the war in Italy, and here's a mixed group of Allied Catholic soldiers outside the Vatican garden. And if I press this, you'll see my dad in this group. He was able to speak with the Pope. The Pope spoke reasonable English, knew of a school near my dad's home, and afterwards, Dad received this medallion that was given to troops that met the Pope at this time. Let me tell you a little bit about Mary Bray, my mother. She was involved in agriculture, or war as it was known, very important during the war. People were on rations. And she also became a lecturer in dairying towards the end of the war. A little bit about my mum. She didn't go to school between 11 and 15 because her dad said, what's the point of paying for a girl to get an education? She had got a place at the agricultural college called Hutton near Preston, and she needed the fare to be able to get there. Her dad was not supporting her college education either. So she went to the local farmer and sold him her father's hen cabin without his permission, pocketed the money, and went to college. Their relationship was broken at this point. She had a habit of dealing with late students when she was a lecturer in dairying. Students, I think, had to be on time at 6:30, and if a student was persistently late, Mum would go into their bedroom, pull their bed from under them, and turn the bed over on them with the words that in farming you can't wait to milk the cows. You need to be up. So you're getting a picture, I think, of my mother as a feisty woman who knew her own worth. Her mother was wonderful, she said. Regretfully, she died at the age of 49, much too soon. So my mum's feisty and strong. My dad and mum met at the agricultural college. Dad was a mature student, aged over 31, something like that. And he met my mum as a lecturer there. This is their wedding day, obviously, and the vicar in the scene was Mum's brother, Uncle John, who gave her away on her wedding day. She didn't inform her father about the wedding. And 4 boys were the result of their union. And this is outside our farmhouse. You see our van in the background. I'm the tallest of the four boys, the oldest. Then there's Peter, the little one, then Ralphie, and then David. This is an older picture of us, and this is the Rogues Gallery today. I wouldn't like to meet this group in a dark alley, would you? So, three of us went to St. Mary's Roman Catholic Primary School in Chipping, Lancashire. Uh, it was a two-room classroom, and the infants class was particularly big when I was there. We were the baby boomers, and I didn't learn to read until I was 8. That was a struggle, perhaps because there was not enough teacher attention. I don't remember the teacher trying to help me learn to read. At the age of 8, we lost the family farm. It was a tragedy, a financial disaster, and it broke both the hearts of my mum and dad. And dad, for a while, went into a mental hospital. We moved to this valley 9 miles away, where we had a house, fortunately, so we were not homeless. And you can see the valley in the bottom with green fields and then lots of rough pasture and some forestry as well. I knew this was beautiful growing up. And we went to Thorneyholme Roman Catholic Primary School, and the church is just down the road from here, and I was an altar boy. And here's the junior class, and here's me, and Ralph and David are in this group picture as well. Things were not good at home at this time, and I began to pray for my dad, for God to make my dad better. I also read a story. It was one of the first stories I read. There's a I could read perhaps quite well, and I was about 10 years old when I read this story. So it was about a boy my age, actually, who was finishing school at the age of 10, and the next day was going down the coal mine. What was his future? And on this day, he met an artist who gave him some advice. Continue your education through night school, he said, and don't get married until you're 30. So the boy took this advice to heart, went back to the head teacher, who was a mathematician, and asked for maths help. He trained as an engineer, qualified as an engineer. He married the head teacher's daughter, and he and his friends and his wife were involved in a kind of revival in the village, which resulted in the stopping of drinking of alcohol, of sports, of reading in a reading room, of lectures, and so on, a transformation of a village. It's a kind of Zion story, maybe Methodist in origin. And it was inspirational for me. Somehow it touched my heart. The seed of Zion was sown. When I was 8, we started this stall with just two things: milk in bottles and orange squash. Just two things. And the deal with Dad and I was that I would get a penny a bottle that I sold. At this time, I was getting sixpence a week pocket money, which was wonderful. But I sold 30 bottles on the short afternoon because it rained by the mid-afternoon. So it's 5 times my normal weekly pocket money. So I thought this was a good thing. In fact, it did so well. My parents took over the stall and started selling homemade jams and pot plants and some of the range of things that you see here. The stall helped us recover somewhat financially. At the age of 11, you had the opportunity to take an exam to decide your educational fate, your class fate in many ways. If you passed the exam, you could go to the grammar school, which prepared you for the professions, and some lucky people would go to university. If you failed that exam, you went to a secondary modern school where you left at 15, perhaps to an apprenticeship if you were lucky, to working class jobs in factories and trades, or being a secretary if you are a woman. At the best, perhaps a nurse. So I failed this exam. And my chances of going to university at this point were 1 in 37,000 if you fail this exam. But I went to a country secondary school, which was a very good school, person-centered, decent, some excellent teachers who encouraged us and made us believe in ourselves. And I had a maths teacher who gave me maths extra homework for 18 months before I left. And that was crucial for my next educational step. Like everybody else, I left Riversmead at the age of 15. Um, and here's I in my Riversmead uniform. And you see us four brothers again. And it's a Tuesday in March when I'm around 13. Dad's late, which means he's been drinking more. So I do my jobs. I must do my jobs. It's very serious trouble if I don't do my jobs, which was feeding the hens and collecting the eggs and doing some other jobs. And decided I would go upstairs to my bedroom and be out of the way when Dad came home. I did my jobs, came into the kitchen, and my dad was already there. I was in terror. Oh no, I thought. But to my amazement, Dad was sober and talking quietly with my mother. Friday came, another drinking day. Dad came home sober. Next Tuesday, drinking day. Dad came home sober. What I found out later is that my mum and the doctor had got together. The doctor talked to Dad on that fateful Tuesday and with skill persuaded Dad to stop drinking with the help of some pills that made you sick if you drank alcohol. So our life began to be transformed. And that's why I'm starting to do well in school. That's why I'm doing extra maths homework. So at the age of 15, I transfer with another boy from Riversmead to Ribblesdale, where we could take exams at 16, like in the grammar school. This was another secondary modern school, but it was larger and in the town, and they had a fifth year. So here I was good in maths already, using the same textbook for 18 months for the homework that the kids in this school did. And at the end of the year, I and the other boy that transferred had the best exam results in the school. I remember cycling home, so happy. So failed at 11. Now, uh, this is our class uh, at Ribblesdale, 15 to 16-year-olds. This is me. I hear Mum and Dad one evening talking again quietly in the kitchen. And that day I found out later from Mum that he'd talked with Dr. Lord, another doctor in the practice. Dr. Lord had been injured in the D-Day landings. Dr. Lord understood my dad and was a healer. And Dad really began to get better. This teacher here was my maths teacher and my form teacher at Ribblesdale, another good teacher. So, at the age of 16, having failed to get into the grammar school, my exam results at 16 were good enough to get into the grammar school, to do what's called advanced level studies, which were college level courses in the States, would have been college level courses in the States that enabled me eventually, when I passed them, to go to university. So I had good teachers here too. And I want you to note the year the school was founded, 1554. I think that's 120, that's 220 years before the United States becomes an independent country. So I had one particular really good teacher called Roy Adams, who I went back to see regularly after I left the school. He really was a deep encouragement. I wouldn't have got to university without his help. So from 11 to 18, I went to three schools, three secondary schools. Uh, and when I was 15 at Riversmead, I became Victor Lodorum, champion athlete. When I went to Ribblesdale, I became champion athlete that year. And when I went to the grammar school the next year, I was also champion athlete. So that was also good for my confidence. But really, I want to talk about this hill that I saw every day from whichever school I attended from the age of 11. It's called Pendle Hill, and it's just below mountainside, just below 2,000 feet. George Fox, founder of the Quakers, looked north in 1652. He was moved by the Spirit, he said, to climb this hill. And looking north, he saw a great people gathered. And that was the beginning of the Quaker movement as a mass movement at the end of the English Civil War, a brutal war with a killing rate that was worse than in World War One. The Quakers have been such a force for good in our land, and I knew the story, was inspired by the story. But there are other radicals in this valley too. So we've talked about the Quakers. Chartists were a parliamentary reform movement that met on the flanks of Pendle Hill. So the soldiers on horses, the cavalry couldn't cut them down as they protested and agitated for parliamentary reform, a vote for every male over the age of 21, secret ballots, equal constituencies, and so on. The Chartists failed, but their goals were in the end achieved. Um, Chartists and Pendle Hill. The third Labour MP in the country was elected by Clitheroe, this town that we're seeing Pendle Hill from. And Latter-day Saints had their biggest first successes in this valley also. So Latter-day Saints are part of the radicality around Pendle Hill. You can ask me more about that. So Ribble Valley, that's from Preston, where the first baptisms happened, going on up to Clitheroe and a little bit beyond, is sacred geography, as sacred as Palmyra, as Kirtland, as Nauvoo, as Independence. But you've not heard about it probably. Remember the stall that I helped found and my parents took over? Well, in 1967, we had a massive flood down this river. 5 inches of rain fell in 3/4 of an hour, and it flooded the house. It wiped our small market garden away. And my parents felt very insecure. I flooded our house, which was right by the river. And we moved to a nearby village. And then in that village, we started the jam pot. We had a proper shop. We weren't rained off. It wasn't cold. There's such an improvement, and we could be open not just the weekend, but other days during the week as well. My parents prospered here. And these are some of the work that my dad did, very skilled wood turning. So at the age of 18, passing A levels, I went to Y College to study horticulture. It was a school of agriculture and horticulture for the University of London. Now, I'm not 18 in this picture, I'm more like 55. But Y College was wonderful, small, 300 undergraduate students, maybe 50 postgraduate students. But it didn't begin well, even though I had a wonderful time later on. I found out that later that 80% of the men in my year had been to private schools, were privileged, wealthy, and arrogant. And on my second night, when all the other students came, I was dragged out of bed at midnight and thrown into a bath of cold water. I was thrown into that bath as a political conservative. Everybody voted conservative in the area in which I grew up. I arose out of the water of that involuntary baptism a socialist. Now, that's a bad word in the States, so I apologize for swearing. But I was suspicious from now on with wealth and class and privilege when it also meant arrogance. So, another picture of White College, the second floor windows are the library. At the end of my first year of a 3-year course, I was able to work on a lily farm looking at Mount Hood, Oregon, a lily farm, fields of lilies. It was beautiful. I loved my 9 weeks there. There's two other Brits there, and also Jan Cooper, who was an elementary school teacher, about 10 years older than the rest of us, but enormous fun and was very kind to us, enabled us to go down rafting on the River Hood and things like that. Um, and then in week 8, she disclosed shyly that she was LDS, a Mormon, and she introduced me to the story of Joseph Smith praying in a grove. The story that I read was all right to read for a Catholic boy. We knew of things like this happening to the saints before us. But somehow this story resonated with my soul. At this point, I'd become a seeker. I was questioning the Catholic Church. I was looking for something better. And Joseph's prayer method sowed a seed that one day I too should ask God for his opinion about my spiritual direction. The following summer, I went to work on a tree and shrub nursery in Germany. And after I graduated with a good degree, I went to Tankstedt and worked on another tree and shrub nursery. This Kreis-Pinneberg area near Hamburg is the biggest tree and shrub nursery in the world at this time, probably still is. And it's here I met Mormons 2 years later again. Issues, didn't like secret temple worship, not knowing what went on, and I definitely was suspicious about not ordaining blacks into the priesthood. So I knelt by my bed and asked God for direction, whether or not I should be baptized in the Mormon church. I'm grateful that a vision didn't happen because that would have spooked me. I went home for Christmas and then coming back to Germany on a ship, I met a man called John Menzies, Community of Christ, just had his patriarchal blessing, was feeling spiritually uplifted. And he was interested in my story and said if I was willing, he would take me to meet a Community of Christ congregation in Germany. And that we did. And I was surprised by the love that I received. It was like my own family, except better. I saw the church seal for the first time with the word Friede, peace, on it. I got it straight away. That's what I was looking for too. And I heard the word Zion for the first time and realized, oh, it's Zion that I'm looking for. But I didn't have the word. So a year later, I'm in South Wales, exploring what the saints were like in South Wales. Were they going to be as loving as the ones I'd met in Germany? And they were. So in January 1973, with Jewel sitting next to me, Jewel was a volunteer for the church for a year. I was baptized, later ordained twice, and then Jewel and I were married in this chapel. I'd come to Wales to work in the agricultural botany department 2 hours away at the Aberystwyth University College. and this is the lab in which I worked, and I was able to do a PhD here. I found out new things about flax plants. I had a really good supervisor. Another good teacher impacted my life. Um, but the most important thing, the most reliable piece of evidence that I experienced in those 3 years was an experience of the Holy Spirit following somebody else's baptism 3 months after my own baptism. A couple of years later, I received my evangelist blessing, or what was then called patriarchal blessing, from Reed Holmes, Jules' dad, although Jewel and I were not an item at this point. And that patriarchal blessing became scripture, still is scripture for me. And I brought it in from with me on this trip. It really helped me. God spoke to me through the careful preparation of a dedicated patriarch evangelist at that time. So, in the advice of the document, it said, don't be anxious about getting married. Choose wisely somebody who will support you. So, he had no intention of recommending his daughter, but Jewel and I did. Jewel invited me to go on a trip her father had organized to Israel in 1977. I proposed to Jewel in Beersheba and then had to wait in agony for Jewel's reply, even though we were seeing each other every day. But she gave her reply in Bethlehem, a yes. And there's a story with that, but I don't have time to tell you it now. But this photograph is of the one of the happiest moments of my life. A few years later, Jewel and I had the opportunity to teach in the church's school in Tokyo. We were invited by Apostle Sakini, and Matthew was born by this time, and we had a wonderful 2 years. We learned so much. I realized for the first time I really was a Westerner with all those prejudices and mindset. And Brother Yamada was the one who gently, patiently opened my mind to see things in a very different way. Then the next year, I was a trainee appointee and was doing the Master of Arts in Religion, then through Park College. And we had another baby arrive in the November of that year, um, David. But I was fired at the end of the first year. You can ask me questions about that disaster. I went home, sad, broken in some ways, but I got a really good job teaching religious and health education at Beecham College, Leicester. Leicester is a very multicultural city, so that was one of the reasons to go. There's also a Community of Christ congregation. And although I'd been fired, I only missed church one Sunday. During the time we were living in Leicester, towards the end of that time, we spent a year in the Darvel Bruderhof in East Sussex in the south of England. And this is a community of Christians living, like in Acts 2, all things in common. I went to a conference there with Matthew as a little boy, and I felt that I was walking into Zion, walking into Fourth Nephi amongst these people, and we're still very good friends with them. After that, I was a lecturer in education at Westminster College, Oxford, teaching students how to teach religious education. And then I was a religious education advisor for the city of Leicester, 104 schools, 50% of the children from ethnic minorities, and became a government inspector. And then I got a job coordinating peace and justice ministries for the church. The second time I came to work for the church, I was much more confident. It was 13 years later. I was more mature. I had skills of organizing and management and the confidence that comes when you're in your late 40s. So I coordinated peace and justice ministries for 12 years. It was wonderful. it was the best job I've ever had. 11 colloquies, teaching peace and justice around the church, internationally as well as in the States, writing books, lots of friendships formed. I was involved with 11 International Peace Awards. Ela Gandhi was one of them, granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi. Um, and I was able to commission, with the support of the First Presidency, this statue of beating swords into plowshares. It was covered with black plastic at World Conference in 2002. And at lunchtime during that week, Ela Gandhi and President McMurray uncovered this statue. 3,000 church members, but hugely significant. A granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi touched our movement with this statue. We also lived in Harvest Hills, experimental Zionic communities established by church members in 1972. So 60 homes, approximately around the village green. We were in 189. Brian Monty did his PhD on us and called it Tiny Zion. Here's a picture of Jewel and I and our two boys, David and Matthew. In 2007, well past my sell-by date, I was called into the Council of 12. And here you have Bunda Chibwe and Jim Slaughter ordaining me. I asked for both of them. And I was given responsibility for the church in Asia and met deep, fine, creative, talented Christian ministers and Christian members. I was also responsible for Native Americans. I enjoyed a really good working together with Outreach International. They were so helpful, so generous, both Matt Naylor and Dennis Labayan and other staff members as well. And with their help, I was able to get Outreach International working in India and also in Nepal. Apostle Sakini, I mentioned, had invited us to work in Japan at the Church's School in Tokyo for 2 years. My first task when I went to Asia as an apostle was to go and see Brother Sakini, now ill, suffering from cancer, in a hospital bed. It was a very moving experience to meet my mentor again, who'd always stood by me, even when I was fired by the church. He argued for me. He touched me. Everywhere I went in Asia, I was conscious of Charles Neff, the first apostle to Asia. In some ways, I was following in his brilliant footsteps. I think he's certainly the most significant apostle since World War II, perhaps the most significant apostle in our church history. I was also conscious of the presence of the Buddha. A vision of peace had been launched in Asia 500 years before the birth of Jesus. And this is the Japanese, Chinese characters for peace. And let me just spell it out. The first character means harmony. And then the last two characters mean equal food, equal mouth. So it's kind of peace and food for everyone, or justice. So I think that's good. So I'm going through my story. So after graduating from the Council of 12 that Barb referred to, what did we do? We came back to Leicester, this multicultural city, to a congregation which we loved and were loved by. They had helped me heal after being fired by the church. What else? Jewel and I, and with help of others, started the Leicester Schools Peace Project. We've been involved in community organizing, like Outreach International, community organizing, but with Citizens UK, particularly on migrant justice campaign. I'm in love with church history and are still involved in writing and doing things for church history, particularly in the British Isles. We started Community Connections, an online worship, which is still going. I've been involved in 4 European Peace Colloquies. Our next one, the fourth one, is in March 2026. We started a program called Belief and Dialogue in the Congregation with people from different world religions talking about important issues. And during COVID, we went online and became international with a much bigger audience. So COVID blessed us in some ways. And our next dialogue is on refugees and migrants in January. We started a dialogue also between Community Christ and Brigham Young University academics in 2016 that is still going. We're talking about politics in March. We produced a book. So that's one of my 3 book projects. 2 other books are in the works. Well, one has been published. The second one has been published, which is on the Sermon on the Mount. And Barb, maybe we can send people the flyer on that. That would be easiest, perhaps. And then the other book is with LDS academics on the radical. It's called Radical Spirit: The History and Potential of the Latter-day Saint Tradition. So this is a really significant project too. I love doing reunions as a guest minister, and I'm involved with seekers, particularly in the British Isles. But I'll talk to any seeker anywhere. And this is Adam Coleman, who was baptized in the Irish Sea just 3 weeks ago, one of our seekers, and the beginning again of the work in Ireland. So, what's my testimony? I've been involved in a grace and redemption stories. 2 doctors who helped dad stop drinking and healing from war. A strong mother and 3 brothers who taught me about brotherly love. You can fight, but you have to be loyal to each other. I was blessed by some very good teachers, outstanding teachers, who helped me find my way. I went to 2 universities, no debts, because my way was paid. I met Latter-day Saints and then Community Christ. Community Christ as a result of prayer. I was loved by members in Germany and South Wales. I had experiences of the Holy Spirit that have been more convincing than 3 years of a PhD doing plant genetics. God is real. I continue to have a growing testimony of Jesus. I'm utterly convinced that all are of equal worth in God's sight, including you and me. And we're blessed by Jewel, our boys and now grandchildren. I'm blessed by the call of Zion, that I have a word for it. And I want you to know, do not doubt, Zion is coming. It will be, and we can help, all of us. And this is a picture of Jewel and I and David and our daughter-in-law Laura. It was taken today. It's my story. Over to you for you.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Your sound started to cut out just a little bit towards the end, and we didn't get the name of your grandchildren.
So Shiloh and Carson.
Ah, wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for your willingness to share your story with us today. It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable and open with so many people from all over the world, many being strangers within this group. So thank you for having the strength to share your story in such an open and honest way. It seems like throughout your story, there is an enduring hope that continues through each era. What is it today that gives you hope?
So discovering God's Spirit is real. I've seen Zion glimpsed it. Um, the cause of Zion is the most significant thing you can give your life to. And I love the church because the church has loved me.
I agree. You are loved. But friends, I just want to say thank you for joining us this afternoon. This isn't our normal time, and we appreciate your flexibility. Also want to thank Wendy and Peter for all of your help behind the scenes. There's been some connection problems on my side, and I appreciate you two jumping in where I have failed. Um, Thank you to those in the audience for loving a good story, for joining us this evening or this afternoon, and for including so many wonderful comments in the chat. Andrew, we're going to make a record of the chat and share it with you so you won't miss a single positive comment that was made, and many positive comments about Jewel. We don't want you to miss those. I encourage you all to tune in 10 days from now on Giving Tuesday, December 2nd, when we welcome Mark Staker to the Autumn Lecture Series. Join us as we hear about the role of the Whitmer family in the early years of church history. For example, did you know that when the church was organized in 1830, somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of the members of the community spoke German as their first language? You're going to learn all sorts of fun facts like that with Mark on December 2nd. He's going to talk about this diversity in the early church and the impact of pacifism as a driving force in this German community for 2 centuries. Wendy just dropped the link into the chat where you can register for Tuesday, December 2nd. So until then, friends, please keep reading your church history and certainly have a great day or rest of your day. Andrew, I'm going to turn things over to you for the final word, or if there was anything you wanted to share with us before we let you go for the day.
Just to say a grateful thanks for people coming out to listen and also for supporting Historic Sites Foundation. It's a cause worthy of your support. And for those of you that know me and have left kind messages, thank you. I saw Tom Weber's just now. So thank you to all of you.